it's Jennifer Vatsa-Belladon as Botanicals, and today I'm going to talk about, I have a viewer question, and I've been thinking about it for the past few days, excuse me, mostly because I'm recovering from some kind of respiratory crud that's had me coughing like a motherfucker. Anyways, I'm feeling a lot better, but still have a little bit of a lingering cough, so I'm going to try to get through this as best as I can. So the question was about, this person was asking about working with different entities that don't require them to love themselves or they're just not interested in doing any kind of, from what I understand is that they don't really have any interest in doing self-love work and stuff like that. So they're wondering which entities to work with. And, that necessarily won't, kind of have issues with that. And I mean that yes, there are most entities are going to meet you where you're at, and I think this is something that might apply to multiple people, which is why I'm making a video about it. No one really comes into spiritual work being like, I love myself and I'm awesome and everything's great and I am super awesome. You'll always be a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. And, I get it wrong more than I get it right. And I would say more than self-love, you really need to have radical self-acceptance of where you are. And if you accept where you are, that is a start. It's not to say that the entities that you might work with aren't going to challenge you at times to work on yourself by doing shadow work or any kind of healing work. I can speak from experiences on this in my observations and working with other people, especially like I've seen this even with the brand name magicians out there that don't do or claim they do shadow work, but they really don't, because you would see a spiritual evolution with a lot of these people and you don't. Everyone's got their, kind of demons, as they were, when it comes to things they're working on about themselves. But when, you're talking about ascension and enlightenment and things like that and becoming, more spiritually awake and aware, it's a process. And it's hard to separate out the self from that process and go, well, I'm not going to work on myself at all. I'm just kind of going to do this and whatnot. I've seen people do it, and honestly, some of those brand name sorcerers I talked about aren't so great people. These are people mired with addiction. A lot of them are abusive. You look at their lives and they're constantly falling apart, because you can see that there's a lack of radical self-acceptance, any like remote amount of self-love, and they're not doing any kind of work towards that. So can you work with entities and not focus on yourself? Sure. I don't know what you're going to get out of it. You don't have to love yourself right off the bat. I mean, it's something I've struggled with, still struggle with. I mean, I always were like, well, I have great self-care practices, so surely I must love myself. Actually takes a little bit more than taking a fancy bath to get to actually love yourself. And no, it's not easy work. I wouldn't say I hate myself by any means. I've grown a lot, and in that is being able to accept myself where I am at this present moment, acknowledging where I've been, how I've changed over the years, and where I'm going and want to go, and how I want to grow spiritually. And in order to do that, I don't feel like I would be able to evolve spiritually without incorporating some semblance of shadow work, healing, and radical self-acceptance. And those things are going to make you a much stronger practitioner on every level. I mean, if you want to get consumed by darkness and addiction, and I mean, I'm sorry if I'm sounding really like, I'm gonna tell it like it is person. I mean, if you want to be, like some of these name brand, magicians out there, by all means, go ahead. It's not my path. It's all about balance. And if you can't find the balance that works for you, it's not like working with any spirit or entity or deity isn't really going to help. And a lot of times with some of these people, like I'm not even sure they're working with the deity entities that they say they're working with. It's obvious in a lot of things. It's ego projection, and maybe they're working with egregores or their own thought forms, but it's not. I guess to back up a minute is to ask yourself what you want to get out of working with different entities. It's like my work with Lucifer. Is very much about me learning the process of me learning to love myself more, at least. But they've all brought something to me in different ways. It's not necessarily like, they're beating me over the head, being like, you must love yourself. But it's each one has taught me something different. Abaddon has taught me to let go of what no longer serves me. And that's fucking hard sometimes, but sometimes you just have to say, okay, I need to cut these toxic elements or people out of my life and move on. And doing that and being able to hold up your boundaries around that is an act of self-love and self-preservation. It's saying I matter enough to have this boundary and not to be pulled down by these toxic people. And is it easy? No. Belial, again, has helped me a lot with shadow work and, kind of getting to the core of what I want, what I'm doing. When I first started working with him, because I had done so I was already well into a decade's worth of therapy and self-work at that point in time. And he's like, well, you're way ahead of the curve here. When a lot of people come here, they don't have that history. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell people in specific. Like I can't tell you to love yourself, and you can't make yourself love yourself if you don't want to. And but again, if you have the radical self-acceptance, say, hey, this is where I'm at in life right now, that's a start. Because you might either, we don't know necessarily how your spiritual evolution is going to take you over the years, and you might end up in unexpected places. And I wouldn't, deny myself the possibility of working with certain entities for the fear of that they might make me do self-work. Because whether or not, like, I just find all of them have done that in some ways. Like, even working with Santa Muerte, like, she really held the mirror up to me to, like, make me realize that I had a lot of, while I wasn't necessarily an addict or an alcoholic, I have a lot of addictive tendencies in my personality that I never addressed, which brought me down a whole other route of shadow work, and that led to more self-acceptance in that level. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it's still a work in progress for me. But it's getting into the right mindset and really being open to working with these entities, any of them. I mean, there's some that I've worked with that have, like, it's just the scope of the work hasn't involved that. Like, I work with Mammon sometimes for, money manifestation and stuff like that. I've worked with, like, Suntalak for that. They could give a fuck about your self-love when it comes to those things you're working with. But, if you're really developing a deep spiritual relationship, most of them kind of want you to become a better person. And if by becoming a better person means that you're learning even in just very little ways, how to love yourself more, how to treat yourself better. Or, just looking at your own self-respect. Like I that's something that I've struggled with. And, I've had to put a lot of boundaries in place because I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I sell my products on multiple platforms, and on occasion I deal with some really rude asshole customers. And I'm like, is my self-worth, is my self-respect worth this $20 sale? So this person is being rude and abusive to me? No, cancel sale. I don't need that $20 if that person's going to be treating me like that. That's me upholding a boundary and saying, I deserve better. If you're going to treat me like shit, I don't need to work with you. And it's taken me a long time to get to that place. It's never something that's going to be overnight, but at least I would say be open to it. You know, I'm trying to think of, I've worked with a lot of different dark goddesses and the demonic divine. And, outside of the ones I mentioned that I specifically worked with on for like money manifestation, anyone that I've really built a personal relationship with, has guided me in that direction. I don't know what the fuck some of these other people are doing out there, because I've had an entirely different experience with these entities, and I'm looking at these people, I'm like, well, you're just feeding the fuel of the satanic panic by acting a damn fool. So, yeah, I mean, it's, I guess after rambling about this, I guess my answer to it would be to ask yourself a few questions first. If you're in this position, what do you want to get out of your spiritual practice? What do you want to get out of working with and incorporating any particular entities in that spiritual practice? What are you working towards in your spiritual growth and evolution as a person? And from there, you might find some of your answers that you're looking for. Because and I don't think I've not encountered any, well, on occasion, for the most part, most of them weren't, like, well, I'm not going to work with you because you don't love yourself. But, they'll kind of like sneak a little bit of, lessons learned in there for you. Boy, howdy, that sucks sometimes. But it's a learning process. You're going to stumble and fall at times. We all do. I think as long as you're continuing to learn and grow on some level, but again, it's just looking at what your goals are, what do you want to become through this process, and then finding the balance in that. Like, you don't have to absorb yourself in, the white light woo-woo self-love industry or anything, because that has a lot of toxic elements in and of itself. It's finding what works for you. And what works for me might be entirely different, because I am all about doing like the shadow work and the self work. And I am not to flex, but I'm really awesome at therapy, according to all my therapists. Like odd flex, but I rock at therapy. But I've grown to be a very insightful person. I've gained a lot of wisdom over the years from those really deep explorations. And I love, and maybe it's my neurodivergent thing, but I love seeing patterns and figuring out puzzles and putting it all together and figuring out like, oh, this random thing that happened 40 years ago is why I do this. Or being able to look at something and go, wow, that was something really traumatic I went through, and I'm healed from it, and I'm okay. Or to look at things and go, yeah, I still need to work on that. And every once in a while, I open up a little, I check between the crevice on the couch. I'm like, oh, and now I got to go fix that thing and work on that thing. And it's not always great. One of the things right now I'm struggling with, and I have to work on, being brutally honest, as I mentioned, with some of these brand name uh magicians, there's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse and use in the occult and the left hand path, and there's a lot of people who do videos and live streams while drunk off their ass and high as fuck. Now, I spent 15 of 17 years with my alcoholic addict ex-husband. Thankfully, he's sober now. We parted amicably 6 years ago. But sometimes, like for me, and this is one of those, check behind the couch. Oh, fuck, I forgot that was there. For me, because of that, because of being around other drunk people like that and drug addicts and stuff like that for a considerable chunk of my life, it's very triggering. And what it triggers in me is abject rage at times. Like if I was in the room with any of these people, I would be fist fighting them because I would be that like triggered. So now what I have to do in that, probably something I should have done when my ex-husband got sober, is I should have done the 12-step work through Al-Anon for the families and friends of alcoholics. I now need to go back and do that work. Do I want to? Not particularly, but it's part of me that I see that I realize I have a lot of problematic feelings towards, because part of me wants to be really empathetic because I understand addiction and alcoholism better than most people. But then there's the other problem. It's like, go fucking die in an alley. Just get it over with already. That sort of thing. And I'm so like Philly, I live in Philadelphia, and the opioid crisis here is awful. We have literally like zombies in the streets in places and people shooting up. And I'm just like, go fucking die already. Seriously. Like I have zero empathy, and it comes from that. And that's something I need to work through because that's not okay. I'm a very empathetic person, and again, it's that I understand addiction. I understand that a lot of these people, and God, my God, we have buried so many of them over the years. Someone who actually, lived with us at one point in time, got a shoulder injury, had shoulder surgery, the doctors put him on oxy, became an addict, couldn't get more oxy, became a heroin addict, and died in the streets years later at like 28 years old or something, or 30. But, so it's like it's when you go through something like that, you have so many layers of things that you work through. Like I have absolutely no resentments at all towards my ex-husband, but towards addiction and alcoholism and like certain levels of drunkenness just fills me with this like blind rage. And for me, that's not okay. That's something I want to work on. And I feel like I need to become a better person in my spiritual journey. Working on that helps me become a better person and helps my enlightenment and overall, spiritual evolution. Now I could just ignore that and just, be an asshole to everyone who drinks. That doesn't seem to be, the best option. But and not for nothing, I drink myself. I partake in various, I don't do the hard stuff anymore, but it's one of those things where it's like I saw something in myself that was like, this needs to change, and I'm willing and open to changing it. Is it going to be easy? No. 12-step work is like some of the deepest shadow work you can do. But I'm also thankful nowadays that there's a lot of satanic recovery groups. So, hey, that's awesome. So it doesn't have to be all yay, Jesus. But anyways, I have rambled on for far longer than I anticipated, but I just wanted to be really honest about this question because I've really been thinking about it, and I didn't want to ignore it because I feel like this is something that probably pertains to that's relatable for some people who are, especially if you're just getting onto this path, because a lot of people come into the occult as seekers, as I don't, everyone's got trauma at this point. If you've existed through the past 3 years, hello, you have some trauma. Because shit ain't right. But there's a lot of people that are coming from places of desperation. They're coming from really, life situations, religious trauma, personal trauma, mental health issues, abuse, etc. So it's finding the place, like knowing where you're at this present moment and defining that and being okay with that is a start. And that's really all you need. And from there, I mean, test the waters, like work, if you're drawn to a particular entity, start to work with them. And when you start to work with them, just kind of, be upfront and be like, I'm not really comfortable with doing this kind of thing right now. And see how you can go from there. That's my advice. Anyways, I'm Jennifer. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Yada, yada, yada. Love you all.